I'm Corbett Wall with DB Auction, here with your feeder flash for Monday, February the 13th, brought to you in part by Macrocin by Bimeda. Macrocin is a bold, straight shooting tulathromycin injection that does what it's supposed to do for you, for your cattle, and for your bottom line. For more information, go to macrocin.com. Also, Joplin Regional Stockyards, another good run for them this week. Here on Monday, going to have 8,000 head plus, and they've got some really nice cattle in there. Not that they don't always, but they've got some long strings of really top quality yearlings coming this week, including several of the replacement quality heifers off the fancy steers, and a couple of these larger consignments are going to be AI sired cattle, so they will be really top quality. If you're interested in buying some replacement quality heifers, they'll have them there. And like I said, many northern quality yearling steers included in that too. Finally, $160. I don't know if we're going to get the weighted average in your 5-area feeding region to 160, but we did get the south to 160. That's the market. And you know, it's a barrier, it's a threshold that we finally crossed, and those are important. It was a big deal when we got past 150. You know, and your southern feeders have been dug in at 160 for weeks here, and finally got the 160. I think they probably could have got 161. We barely got some 161 on some fancy clean cattle in the northern plains, but crossing that barrier and getting the 160 is very important. And like I said, we're probably going to come up a few pennies short of that on your 5-area weighted average, but according to that cattle contract library pilot program that we got, evidently the 5-area weighted average is not that important. Most all the cattle were tied to the state weighted averages. Of course, you don't get the Colorado state weighted average because of confidentiality, but there was only like 5% of the cattle on the formula sweetheart deals that were tied to the 5-area weighted average, and I think a lot of other people, and I know I assumed that it would be a higher percentage than that, but most of them tied to the state weighted average, and most of those contracts, it didn't say in there, but most of those require a minimum volume on those weighted averages, and like last week, I'm not sure if they reached it or not, but we reached that threshold, got across it, and those barriers are important, especially on feeder cattle. And when buyers are sitting in the sales buying those cattle, you know, a lot of times they don't want to give the big price in the next 100-pound weight range. And a lot of times they're mixing and mingling the cattle, and they'll buy some cattle that go over a weight threshold and give a little too much for them, and that's how we reach those high levels. But then once we reach those in an up market, then that's the norm, and then it just goes on from there. And we've seen that here the last 2 or 3 weeks as these feeder cattle just keep getting higher and keep getting higher. Once you reach a threshold with them, then they just blow right by it after that. But this past week we've seen 900-pound steers beat $1.80. We've seen 800-pound steers reach $1.90. We've seen 700-pound steers over $2 a pound. That's in just individual quotes, you know, not the whole sale or any one place, but on individual quotes on top quality cattle and on bigger bunches. We've seen 6-weight steers, stalker types up to 230. We've seen 5 weights up to 250. Now, have we seen any 4 weights at $3? I can't confirm that we will have. I haven't confirmed that we've seen any 400-pounders at $3. And now you all are going to say, oh, I saw one calf bringing. I want to see a bunch. I want to see a pretty good drag of them bring $3 a pound. Now, we have seen some cattle weighing well into the 3s bring $3 a pound. Mostly in the southern plains. We've seen it in Beaver, Oklahoma this last week. We saw it in Dalhart, Texas on Thursday. Pretty good little jag of 3-weight steers bring 303. So we've seen those, so now we're just going to keep going on from there. But it's exciting to be in this up market, and I think that these stalker types are still cheap. The feeders not so much. I think they're getting up there, and I think people are are going overboard on them, because I don't know that we're going to get this fat cattle market to record highs or not, like what the futures market says that we are. But the futures market never does come up with the prices that it advertises out front for the most part. But these stocker type cattle, and you know, and I talked to the man that give over $3 for those 3-weight steers, and he says they still make sense. And he's right. And I think even these 4 and 5-weight cattle and those 6-weight green cattle that have a lot of condition to them, you know, they're still worth the money, because you can cheapen them up once we get here to early spring. And if you wait until April to buy your stockers, it's going to be too late. There's not going to be any available, and the price on them is going to be out of sight. But if you have some stockers to sell, keep them green and hold them as long as you can, because they are going to bring lots and lots of money. Let's talk about your board for last week. February live cattle futures. Monday was up 55, Tuesday down a quarter, Wednesday was up 22, Thursday up just 2 cents, Friday up 37, with February live cattle ending the week at 161.20. That was up 93 cents compared to the end of last week. April was up 368 for the week at 163.95. Feeder cattle not so much up, but through the week, Monday was up $1.60. We thought it was going to be gangbusters. Tuesday was down 50 cents. Wednesday down 75. Thursday back up 37, and Friday down 42 cents. With March feeder cattle ending the week at 186.40. That was up 30 cents for the week is all. April ended the week at 190.67. That was up just a nickel. But corn was up a little, ended the week on regular trading at 680.5. That was up just 3 cents. Beans are up 10.5 cents at 15.42.5. Your fat cattle trade up through Thursday, and they had significant trade on Thursday. And I think they probably had a lot more trade Thursday evening, and then we had trade on Friday, and I think there was more trade on Friday evening. I think we're going to end up having pretty decent movement for the week. But through Thursday, we had sold 49,700 head in your 5-area feeding region, compared to just 4,000 the previous week, if you remember that, and they did all the trading on Friday night. And then a year ago was 79,900 head. But live sales of steers and heifers last week ranged from 155 on some muddy cattle in the Midwest, up to 161 on some clean cattle and higher quality there in the Midwest. That was $1 to $2 higher. Your weighted average on live steers in the 5-area feeding region was 158.98, almost 159, and we had quite a bit of trade there at the 159, but until Friday, and then it got higher. But you know, even that through Thursday, the near 159, that was almost $1 higher. Dress sales ranged last week from 250 to 254. Heavy on the 254. That was $2 to $3 higher, and the weighted average on dress sales up through Thursday was 253.90. That was about $4 higher on a dress basis than the previous week. But then Friday, things got higher yet. And I always tell you guys, the longer you hang on, the harder you dig in, the better price you have of getting more money for your cattle, especially in an up market like this with your packers short bought. On Friday, Iowa sold 4,700 head confirmed. They sold 31,400 head through 2 o'clock on Friday, and I bet they had some more sales late. That is a huge movement for Iowa, but they haven't been selling too many, but well over 30,000 head in the state of Iowa. And those cattle are muddy, but actually the Nebraska cattle for the most part are more muddy and probably not as high in quality. But live sales in Iowa from 157 to 161. There was some 161 paid for good top quality fat cattle in Iowa. Dress sales all at 254. Nebraska sold 1,000 head confirmed on Friday, 21,300 head for the week. Live sales, and not a whole lot of live sales, because like I said, the cattle got a lot of tag on them. They really don't want to give them a live price. But 157 was the live price we had, and all the dress sales at 254 there also. Kansas sold 2,000 head on Friday early, but there would have been a whole lot more cattle sell Friday late, and that'll be on the wrap-up I give you on the next report, but only 4,200 head for the week. But like I said, Friday afternoon they swung the gates at 160. There was a little dab of trade at 159, but mostly all 160 in Kansas. Texas the same way. They only had 2,400 head sold through 2 o'clock on Friday, only 2,800 head for the week, but they swung the gates in Texas. And like I said, I think we're going to end up with a pretty good movement in your 5-area feeding region once we get those late Friday sales gathered up. But all the cattle in Texas brought 160 on Friday. Box beef cutout values were higher for a change to end the week. Your weighted average on all of last week's sales, $267.89. That was up $2.07 for the week compared to the previous week's weighted average. Select was $254.50, up $2 even compared to the previous week's weighted average. And your choice select spread ended up at $13.39. It had narrowed significantly earlier in the week with choice up and select down. It got under $10, but then spread back out to about where it was the previous week. But only 535 loads of cuts, grinds, and trimmings. Your slaughter was down, and your packers have to have reeled in the slaughter a little bit because they were so short bought. But only 630,000 head were harvested last week. That's 11,000 less than the previous week, 41,000 less than the same week a year ago, and our year-to-date slaughter is already down 1% compared to this time a year ago. Talk about what else is going on. I'm coming to you from Florida, in Lake City, Florida. I gave a talk here on Saturday to the North Florida Cattlemen's Association. Had a really good crowd there, and got to visit with some people that I really enjoyed visiting with, and the different kinds of producers that I don't get to talk about very often, and enjoyed that. And then got a little tour from John Willis that owns the sale barn here at Lake City at Columbia Livestock, and enjoyed my time there at Lake City, and met several new friends here in Lake City, Florida. Talk about your feeder cattle market. Your real-time index on DV auction ended the week at 183.27. That was up $1.62 compared to the previous week. Now your trends in your sale barns for last week, feeder cattle, that was about what they were, was steady to $2 or $3 higher, but not that many feeder cattle really selling. What feeder cattle are selling are just giant calves, but stockers sharply higher, $10 to $20 higher. I don't care where you looked, what sale you went to, but 3, 4, 5, and 6 weights with grazing conditions sold $10 to $20 higher everywhere, and I still think they look cheap. Talk about your sales late in the week or on Saturday. Fort Scott Livestock Market in Fort Scott, Kansas had a good sale, 2,400 head of feeders there. You look at this automated market report from Cattle Market Central. They had 5 weights, averaged 220.77, had 6 weight steers with a weighted average of 204.51, had 7 weights, averaged 187.79, with one stick out deal, an individual quote there. 77 head of steers weighed 771 in Fort Scott, Kansas, bring 193.85, and that's pretty darn close to 800 pounds, guys. Had 412 head of 8 weight steers that averaged 841 with a weighted average price of 182.43, and 518 head of 9 weight steers averaged 928, weighted average price 173.43 on them, and several commodity groups involved in that. Your Zoetta stickout sale of the day was Winter Livestock Auction in Winter, South Dakota. That 2,700 head of feeders there. Pretty good market there throughout. And you look at this automated market report out of Winter Livestock, 225 head of 6 weight steers averaged 654, weighted average price 209.18. 554 head of 7 weight steers averaged 738, and all of those steers at Winter weighing in the 7s had a weighted average price of 191.83. 529 head of 8 weight steers in Winter averaged 837 with a weighted average price of 188.29. And then on some heifers, they had 371 head, 6 weight heifers averaged 653, average price on them 180.99. Big time sale in Winter. Congratulations to them. including one of our stick out sales here on our top quotes. Winter livestock auction sold 61 head of steers, weighed 922 at 185.50. Can you believe that? Eastern Missouri Commission Company in Bowling Green, Missouri, one of my favorite markets there. They sold us stick out deals of replacement heifers. It was a smaller group, just 29 head of the Palmer heifers, which is a big deal whenever they sell them. 29 head of those replacement heifers weighed 772 at $2.15 a pound. Figure those up, guys. But the best quote that I saw anywhere late last week or over the weekend, your Macrison No BS top quote for the day was Fort Pierre Livestock Auction in Fort Pierre, South Dakota. They sell 94 head of 599 pound steers, 600 pound steers at $234. That's your feeder flash for Monday.